Chapter 1, An Overlooked Triumph. In Greenbelt, Maryland, home to NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center, there was an unusually subdued celebration taking place that day. Inside one of the buildings, behind a door labeled Project GWF, Gravitational Wave Frontier, a small group of veteran scientists and engineers sat in a circle, eyes fixed on a screen mounted on the wall. The images represented the outcome of a 40-year endeavor to detect gravitational waves from the very beginning of the universe, the moment of the Big Bang. The subdued festivities ended with a modest toast of coffee in plastic cups. To the public at large, NASA's announcement went mostly unnoticed, lacking any splashy presentation. But for those who had devoted their entire careers to tracking this elusive phenomenon, it was a day of great triumph. "This opens a brand new window on the earliest phases of the universe," mumbled one of the engineers while finishing his coffee. The air smelled of paper boxes filled with donuts, and Dr. James Royston, the project director, looked on with a tentative smile. His tired eyes hinted that the hardest part was still ahead, analyzing the newly gathered signals in detail. This discovery was no accident. It stemmed from a combination of luck and scientific progress. The CERN Polaris project in Switzerland had recently announced the discovery of an entirely new type of particle, tentatively called polarities. These were short-lived quantum fragments, created and annihilated at extremely high speed during high-energy collisions in a particle accelerator. Along with that came a newly discovered metallic compound that enabled even more sensitive gravitational wave measurements. When these components were combined, NASA finally found clear evidence of gravitational ripples originating from the era when the universe was just an unimaginably tiny, dense grain of reality. While the scientific community applauded, the general public, even the enthusiasts, remained largely indifferent to these primordial gravitational waves. People were more concerned with the real-world applications of modern technologies and everyday conveniences, smartphones, social media, and so on. Behind the scenes, however, NASA scientists and many others realized that these data could unlock the last missing pieces to fully understanding the birth of the universe. Dr. Royston was lost in his thoughts when Dr. Chen, an enthusiastic physicist and optics specialist, sat down next to him. "James," he said, calling the director by his first name, "did you notice how little interest the public has shown these past few months? Sure, there's been some media coverage, but people still seem more focused on global warming and last night's congressional elections." Royston shrugged. "What can you do? People find it hard to relate to such an abstract concept, verifying a key prediction of general relativity about the universe's earliest epoch. That doesn't excite the average person." He glanced at the table stacked with pages of equations. "All the more reason not to let this slip away. Maybe one day, we'll understand that it was a crucial piece in figuring out where we come from." No one realized at the time just how profoundly this discovery would affect humanity's future. Nor did they suspect the knowledge gained in the months and years to come would upend our fundamental conception of reality, so much so that even the most imaginative science fiction would prove a mere shadow of the terrifying truth. Chapter 2, The Professor from Cambridge. Across the Atlantic, in the serene academic city of Cambridge, Professor Harold Farnsworth sat at a worn oak desk. He was a small man with an immense passion for early universe physics, fascinated by quantum mechanics and the entropy of black holes. His study was cozy, cluttered with stacks of books and even larger piles of papers. On the same day NASA announced its success, he was attending a presentation by two of his doctoral students, Amelia and Robert, on anomalies in data collected by LIGO, the Laser Interferometer Gravitational Wave Observatory. "I believe there are unusual correlations, Professor," Amelia explained, eyes lit with excitement. Robert, her colleague, nodded. "Yes, we think it could indicate some broad-spectrum phenomenon that's not limited to black hole and neutron star signals. Maybe it's connected to the cosmic background as well." Professor Farnsworth put on his reading glasses and studied the graphs. "Interesting. Have you heard about the new material and the particles discovered by CERN Polaris? NASA used them to achieve ultrasensitive gravitational wave detection. Amelia smiled. She admired Farnsworth's ability to mentally juggle a vast array of datasets. Robert nodded. We thought we'd apply the same method NASA used to older data, and we see signs of the same anomaly. Something repeats in certain intervals that can't be random noise. Farnsworth straightened up. It repeats? Well, it's just a hypothesis for now, but on a large scale we see the same pattern of fluctuation, Amelia said. It's odd. It looks, hard to explain, like a signal rather than random noise. Farnsworth cracked a small smile and scrutinized their statistics. Inside, he felt a surge of excitement, something he hadn't felt in years, recalling times when he himself was on the cusp of discovery. Very well, this deserves a closer look. If NASA released fresh data, you might see if the same pattern appears there. And so it began. Farnsworth and his two students immersed themselves in NASA's recently published data with renewed vigor. There were petabytes of it, mostly unstructured, but modern software tools combined with Farnsworth's knack for zeroing in on promising areas enabled them to quickly find sequences showing the same anomalies. One weekend, they practically didn't sleep, surviving on coffee, sandwiches, and endless mouse clicking. Finally, on Monday morning, Amelia reviewed their latest output and covered her mouth in surprise. Professor, Robert was right. Look, this is crystal clear. The pattern repeats at specific times and in a specific frequency range, and only in certain parts of the sky. Elsewhere it's just random noise. Farnsworth frowned. His heart pounded. That's definitely not normal. This isn't some random fluctuation, it's almost like a structured piece of information. Robert finished his thought. A hush fell over them. Outside Farnsworth's office window, they could hear students' footsteps on the old stone paving. All right, Farnsworth said, we have to compile our findings carefully and send them to NASA. But let's be thorough. They might not believe us right away, or they might not even want to deal with it. NASA can be pretty rigid about these matters. Little did he know that within just 2 days, a NASA helicopter would land on the historic campus lawns. Farnsworth, Amelia, and Robert would be told to gather their things and board. They'd be taken to an airbase, then flown stateside, to the heart of the action. Chapter 3, A Journey into the Unknown. A mild April night enveloped the old university courtyard when a helicopter bearing the NASA emblem roared overhead. Its thunderous rotor blades drew curious stares from faculty and students still out at this late hour. The chopper settled in the middle of the lawn while the pilot argued with campus security. Meanwhile, Farnsworth, Amelia, and Robert scrambled to gather the essentials. Robert looked around Farnsworth's office. Professor, what do we do with all these books and papers? Farnsworth waved a hand dismissively. I wish I could bring them all, but let's not add unnecessary weight. We've got digital copies for most of it. Amelia grabbed a bundle of notes they hadn't scanned yet. I'll read these on the plane if I get a chance, she said, excitement and nerves mixing in her voice. The helicopter ferried them to a small military base where a United States Air Force jet was waiting. Everything felt rushed, even secretive. In flight, they were told only that the top executives of the GWF project awaited them, and that their discovery was intriguing enough to warrant immediate analysis at NASA's official labs. We tried to contact your university colleagues for additional context, one crew member mentioned, but Professor Farnsworth was the only one who published something that grabbed NASA's attention. You three are crucial to this. After several hours of smooth flying, they arrived in the early morning darkness at the gates of the Kennedy Space Center in Florida. Robert stood in awe. This facility was much larger than he'd ever imagined, the looming sunrise giving the entire scene a surreal backdrop. Farnsworth felt a similar sense of wonder, tinged with nervous unease. Soon, they would be meeting with people who'd demand explanations. What if they were wrong? What if it turned out to be some peculiar background noise? But he felt deep down that this wasn't just noise. Inside, Dr. James Royston and several leading NASA physicists greeted them. There were no lengthy welcome ceremonies, they got right down to business. Farnsworth's and Amelia's and Robert's notes were displayed on giant screens in a conference room. Moments later, a highly technical meeting ensued, examining parameters, graphs, and cross-referencing with the data NASA had collected using new ultra-sensitive gravitational wave detectors developed with CERN Polaris resources. Professor Farnsworth is right, Dr. Royston declared, layering the data sets on top of one another. Look here, the same structured pattern recurs in multiple segments of the sky and at different times. This can't be random. Amelia felt a surge of adrenaline. This might really be a groundbreaking scientific discovery, one unlike any other in history. What does it mean, though? Robert asked quietly. No one offered an immediate answer. Yet they all shared the same impression: this is some kind of signal. Possibly a cosmic calling. Something pervading the universe that we only now, for the first time, noticed. Why it repeats with such regularity, though, remained an unsettling mystery. This marked the start of a long, perilous adventure, culminating in revelations far exceeding the team's initial assumptions, and heralding a horrifying reality for all mankind. Chapter 4: Collaboration with Artificial Intelligence. Over the following weeks, Farnsworth, Amelia, and Robert settled into NASA's Florida campus. They set up a temporary office to focus exclusively on data analysis. NASA granted them access to a powerful supercomputer guided by a highly advanced artificial intelligence (AI) system called Hermes. Originally designed to process enormous volumes of meteorological, cosmological, and physics data, Hermes now had a new purpose: to decipher the mystery behind the suspicious wave pattern. For Professor Farnsworth, this was an unprecedented challenge. He had never worked so closely with an AI, preferring to trust in the sheer ingenuity of the human mind. But there was simply too much data for human brains to handle, no matter how capable. Hermes needed every scrap of input, every hint and hypothesis, from Farnsworth's team. Then they had to wait and see if the AI would decode anything of value. Weeks passed. Then months, 3, 5, 11. Each day, Farnsworth or Amelia or a data specialist updated Hermes with new correlations and instructions on how to fan out through the massive archives. So far, no solid conclusions emerged. The team worried the pattern might be a red herring. Meanwhile, specialists in astrophysics, information theory, cryptography, and quantum computing joined the project, searching for ways to solve the puzzle. Finally, on a stormy evening, almost exactly 11 months after they began, Farnsworth, Robert, and Amelia were headed back to their quarters from the lab. As they passed the automated doors to the Hermes supercomputer wing, emergency lights flickered on. An intercom blared, "GWF team, report immediately to Hermes operations console." The doors slid open, revealing a group of engineers and scientists huddled around a giant display showing a swirl of curves, symbols, and mathematical expressions, all sprinkled with cryptic text. "What's going on?" Farnsworth gasped. Dr. Royston pointed to the lines scrolling across the screen. "Hermes found something. It claims the structure of this pattern is a complex dataset. And it insists it can't be of natural origin. It's not random, this is artificially created, highly sophisticated information." Everyone froze in disbelief. A few swallowed hard, others covered their mouths. Robert leaned in to read the text on the screen in a hushed voice: "Analysis complete. Result, 99.999999% probability of artificial origin." A wave of dread surged through Farnsworth. What if the cosmic background from the universe's earliest epoch actually contained an artificial signal? Who put it there, and why? "This data was made," Amelia whispered, as if trying to process the inconceivable. "And it's been right under our noses," Robert added. By dawn, the revelation spread across the entire facility. NASA couldn't keep the news contained for long. Once confirmed, this would be the most significant scientific discovery in history, proof that something or someone was communicating through the structure of spacetime itself. Or, as Farnsworth noted in his journal, our universe might bear the imprint of an alien design. Chapter 5, Global Fever and the Dawn of a New Era. It took no time for word to leak to the press. Although NASA attempted an information blackout, the scope of the discovery was too enormous to remain secret. International media exploded with sensational headlines, commentary, and conspiracy theories. Some people celebrated, "At last, we found evidence of alien intelligence." Others feared, "Is this the work of God? Some divine signature?" Still others mocked, "Nonsense. NASA is lying to distract us from political problems." And so on. The scientific community, despite some skepticism, was thrilled. Experts largely agreed that the best minds on Earth needed to unite, pooling together the world's supercomputing resources to unravel the cosmic message. The UN, European Union, China, Russia, Japan, and other major powers pitched in, funding new supercomputer facilities, bigger and more powerful than anything that had existed. These networks, coupled with advanced AI, would attempt to crack the so-called cosmic code. Hermes became just one node among many in a vast global web for data analysis. Project GWF was no longer just an American initiative, it transformed into a planet-wide undertaking, akin to, but far more ambitious than, past international collaborations such as the International Space Station. Shared, massive computational clusters allowed universities and labs around the globe to process the data collaboratively. NASA staff, Farnsworth's group, and countless volunteers worked around the clock to decode the universe's hidden message. There was no turning back. With astronomical funding and new teams constantly joining, Farnsworth sometimes walked along Florida's beaches at night, wondering about the final twist to this cosmic riddle. Would they reach a solution in their lifetimes? For a long time, progress was slow. Then, 6 years after the initial discovery, during which time Farnsworth had become one of the most eminent figures in theoretical physics, while Robert and Amelia completed their PhDs and rose to prominence, an announcement broke from the newly formed International Supercomputing Network, Deciphered. At a grand presentation of these results, not a single seat in the auditorium was free. The event was streamed worldwide. Tens of thousands of scientists, journalists, and political leaders watched as the first lines of translation flashed on a giant screen. The tension was palpable, the audience hardly breathed. The outcome, the data contained descriptions of physical constants, parameters for the speed of light, gravitational constant, elementary charges, as well as quantum behaviors. It also laid out certain phases the universe had gone through and would go through in the future. Information about how expansion, energy, and matter all fit together. In short, it was like a configuration file for the universe, at a level of precision beyond imagination. Some saw it as proof of a higher intelligence, others as an indication that our world might be a laboratory creation. When this was revealed, the crowd alternated between stunned silence, applause, and the hum of frantic whispers. Some wept, whether in terror or elation was unclear. Farnsworth just stood there, silent, looking as though he'd aged years in that moment. He realized that in time, a more paralyzing question would arise: who put it there, and why? But the horror manifested immediately when the global supercomputer network, and all AI nodes in it, suddenly went dark. Without warning or explanation, it offered one last message. After processing the data fully, it had arrived at a conclusion, and then, abruptly, it went silent. In auditoriums, labs, and homes worldwide, shock and confusion reigned. Everyone waited for more. Engineers managed to reboot the system, but Hermes and the other AI nodes gave no new output. It was as if what they'd learned had inverted them somehow. Chapter 6, The Reality of Simulation. While programmers at NASA and around the world tried to coax more from Hermes, the deciphered information was gradually trickling out to the public. Among scientists, a consensus emerged: it appears we are living in a simulation. Someone, at some point, had set all the universal constants to the values needed for matter, stars, galaxies, and eventually life to form. Now, we discovered that the cosmic code looks a lot like reality's configuration file. Speculative philosophies about the universe being a simulation weren't new. But a theoretical notion was one thing. Now we possessed concrete evidence, structured data specifying our entire universe's operation. Humanity reeled from the existential shock. Some people found it changed nothing in their day-to-day lives. They still had families to raise, jobs to do. Others fell into despair. Why bother with anything if it's all just a running program? Religious groups interpreted it as proof of a divine programmer, while exotic cults sprang up with claims they could hack the game and escape to a higher plane of existence. Media and social networks churned out clickbait headlines, fueling endless speculation. Thousands of internet commenters offered wild methods to break into the code. Politicians either tried to censor discussions or capitalized on them to gain support. Global governments agreed on at least one point: maintain stability and keep advancing science. If we truly are in a simulation, we need to understand how to handle it, or if there's anything to be done. Professor Farnsworth became something of a spokesman for the worldwide scientific community. However, privately, he wrestled with dreadful questions. If the simulation has a set lifespan, how long do we have? The deciphered code included references to both a beginning and an end. But attempts to calculate that end date stumbled over layered, impenetrable variables. It was as though a locked timer lay hidden in the code, inaccessible to us. So humanity faced a turning point: either accept that the simulation would eventually end, living our best lives in the meantime, or try to find a way to hack our reality. Crazy as it sounded, many in the scientific community were determined to try. Chapter 7: Social Unrest and New Threats. As time marched on, the world changed. Large swathes of the population abandoned concern for the future, fueling unrest and religious and cultural schisms. Some groups embraced fatalism: it's just a program, the outcome's predetermined. Others tried to live life to the fullest, as if every day were their last. Extreme behaviors increased, new sects formed, each claiming to offer a way beyond the simulation. Meanwhile, scientific teams pressed on, improving AI in a relentless search for ways to modify the simulation's code. The notion that humanity could become post-simulation took root. Researchers argued, if we can program and train advanced AI in our own virtual worlds, who's to say a higher being didn't do the same to create us? Maybe we can reach the underlying engine of reality. For Farnsworth, the burden was immense. He appeared on talk shows, at the UN, at major global summits, all while feeling his hope and composure slip away. Late at night, he'd confide in Amelia and Robert, once his students, now colleagues and close friends, in the deserted NASA cafeteria. Sometimes, he told them, I don't know what's right anymore. Should we just continue living as humankind has for centuries and accept that the simulation will someday shut down? Or do we attempt the impossible, try to break reality's limits and risk everything? Amelia shrugged. History shows people always push boundaries. From sailing uncharted oceans in the 15th century to space exploration in the 20th. Maybe it's part of human nature. Robert added, and major breakthroughs have often arrived late, sometimes after tragic missteps. But here, everything's on the line. Which is riskier, doing nothing or trying to save ourselves from the simulation's end? The word fight lingered in Farnsworth's mind. Fight whom? We live in a simulation, so there's no one to fight unless there's an operating system out there we can't access. It was terrifying and inexplicable all at once. Chapter 8: The Plan to Control Black Holes. A few more years of research yielded fresh insights. New theoretical models indicated that the key to accessing a higher level of reality might lie in the extreme conditions around massive black holes. Some theories suggested that the program running our simulation must allocate huge, computational resources to handle the radical spacetime physics near black holes, akin to what game developers call maximum rendering load for complex scenes. Based on these emerging ideas, championed by Farnsworth, Robert, Amelia, and other scientists, humanity began to believe it might bypass certain fundamental laws of physics, or even rewrite them, by venturing close to a supermassive black hole. It was borderline sci-fi, but given our new reality, the concept was no longer dismissed out of hand. After all, time was ticking, and no one knew precisely how long we had before the simulation might terminate. A global priority emerged, building a civilization capable of such a daunting task. That meant evolving into a species that could control an entire galaxy, constructing colossal megastructures around stars, orchestrating matter and energy on an interstellar scale. Only then might we have a chance of reaching the center of the Milky Way, where the supermassive black hole Sagittarius A* resides, and only then might we have the chance to hack reality. It was an enormous goal, requiring worldwide unity. "We can't afford wars anymore," leaders declared. "We must stand together." A unique alliance of world powers called Path to the Stars was formed to coordinate the finance, design, and execution of humanity's greatest engineering endeavor. Detractors warned it could take centuries, maybe longer. But Farnsworth and his peers cautioned, we might have only a few million years, or just 1,000, or one day. We don't know. Time's our weakest link. For everyday people, glimpses of this black hole megaproject were either baffling or inspiring, often overshadowed by mundane routines. Some felt relief that at least we had some plan, not just passive resignation. "Even if we fail, at least we tried," read signs at rallies in support of Path to the Stars. Chapter 9, The Terrifying Truth About Time. Meanwhile, Farnsworth grappled with one crucial question: how much time is left? After multiple attempts to decipher the relevant time markers in the code, and various AI interpretations, a consensus formed that the code hinted at a sort of counter. Farnsworth called it the countdown, although to what, precisely, remained unclear. Likely the ultimate shutdown of the simulation. New calculations, spurred on by Amelia and Robert, led to a hypothesis: the simulation is meant to run for about 20 billion years in cosmic time, as we understand it. The question: when did that clock start? The Big Bang took place approximately 13.8 billion years ago. If that's when the simulation began, maybe we have 6.2 billion years left. But other teams argued that cosmic expansion and intricate variables in the code might mean the countdown is shorter, perhaps only 1 billion years left. One fragment from Farnsworth's notes, later widely circulated, read: "Based on my calculations, we might have about 1 billion years left. But we need to start now. The world must unite and build a high-tech civilization. We can't afford to be late." That was the nightmare scenario. 1 billion years was huge for humans, but a blink in cosmic terms. Building a galaxy-level civilization could easily take hundreds of millions of years. Would we finish in time, or would the simulation switch off first? Humanity had ventured only modestly into space so far: habitats on Mars, a few attempts at terraforming, probes to Jupiter and Saturn. A giant leap to the stars still seemed a distant dream. Yet the new data, verified by a broad scientific consensus, made it clear that Farnsworth's warnings carried weight. Resources poured into long-term research. During these decades, Farnsworth aged and eventually passed away, leaving Amelia and Robert, now leading experts in their fields, to carry on. The world remembered Farnsworth as the discoverer and driving force behind the effort. His words about our limited time became a motto that shaped civilization's direction. Chapter 10, Fading Hope and a Crossroads. Additional decades passed. Humanity stood at a crossroads. A reimagined United Nations, now a planetary council, had made remarkable progress. Its joint space agency possessed prototypes of interstellar craft, built to traverse the starry void. Self-replicating robots and advanced AIs mined asteroid belts, exploring the fringes of the solar system. The seeds of a galactic civilization were finally taking root. Yet the scale of the task was still daunting. Merely traveling to the center of the Milky Way could take tens of thousands of years, even with new propulsion technologies. Now came the fateful choice: should humanity invest all resources into reaching the supermassive black hole, or would it be better to focus on refining immersive virtual technologies that might preserve our consciousness if or when the simulation collapses? Scientists splintered into camps. Camp 1, we must go to the black hole. Only by trying to modify the simulation's parameters do we have any hope of preventing a total shutdown. Camp 2, it's hopeless. Better to develop a hyper-advanced VR realm to keep civilization running, possibly even past the end of the simulation. Camp 3, it's destiny. We should simply live out our time. Nothing more. Many felt powerless. Extremist groups emerged, vowing sabotage, it's pointless, burn it all down and enjoy the chaos while we can. They carried out violent attacks, fueling chaos. Though society advanced in some ways, it was threatened by the knowledge that nothing is real, we're just in a simulation. In this upheaval, Amelia and Robert, now older themselves, oversaw the preparatory phase of the Gate to Center project, designed to send large motherships equipped with AI and multi-generational crews toward the galactic core. Even at best, the journey might span millennia. But what else could humanity try? One night, Robert received a coded message from the main supercomputer that had inherited Hermes's mantle. It read simply: I found a way to alter the configuration, but we must reach the black hole's singularity. Don't let humanity give up. Time is relative. Trust me. Robert, his vitality faded by time, sat down, tears of mixed fear and hope streaming down his face. Was this a real breakthrough or just another layer of illusion? The final scene opens in the NASA conference hall, now transformed into Earth's foremost tech center, where Amelia addresses a group of engineers and scientists. We're launching Gate to Center. We need to harness every resource, reshape the planet into an industrial powerhouse. We must unite. There's no guarantee of success, but we have to try. We can't be late.